It's been quite a journey so far, hearing people's stories of what they're grateful for and some of the life lessons that they have learned. Today, you're going to hear from somebody that, for me, I consider to be one of the most influential people in my life. Outside of my mom and my dad is my brother. Patrick and I have grown up together. He is 3 years younger than I am. And growing up, we had incredible times together. Now, I'm going to be honest. Nobody competes against each other more than me and my brother. But if you put us together, nobody can compete with us. At least that's what we always thought. Well, I have, as I mentioned, have always been blessed by having him in my life. And today he's going to share something that he is grateful for and a life lesson that he's learned. And so you're going to be in for a treat with that. Before Patrick shares, I just wanted to take a moment to say a couple things about who he is and who he has been in my life. He is probably, for me, one of my greatest role models. And when I think about somebody that I want their opinion, I want some input in my life about what's going on when I'm looking for wisdom, believe it or not, my younger brother is one of those that I count as valuable in giving me direction. But I'm just so proud of who he is. So proud of the man of God that he is, the father, the husband, the uncle that he is to my children. He is an incredible role model. And I think what you're going to hear from him today is going to be very impactful. So Patrick, I love you, buddy. And I always call him Pete instead of Patrick. But you're going to learn some great stuff. So sit back, as I've said before, and get ready, because you're going to be encouraged, challenged, and I hope motivated to live your best life that you can by the words that Patrick is going to share with us.
Hey, my name is Patrick, and I am Jay's brother, and I'm excited to share for a few minutes and appreciate Jay's invitation to jump onto his channel here and share what I'm grateful for and some of the lessons I've learned in my life. When I think about gratitude right now, one of the things that's just kind of overwhelming me is this. One of the things I'm grateful for is the ability to have peace in spite of ever-changing circumstances. One of the things certainly these last 2 years have reminded us is that we have very little control over our life and many of our circumstances, and the things we do control, we even mess up sometimes. But the idea that we can have this inner peace and still live in peace in tumultuous times is something I'm grateful for. And it really ties into something that I would say that has been a life lesson of mine. And if I'm going to share kind of one word or one concept that has been very meaningful to me and beneficial in my life over the last season, is this idea of trying to live in humility. And a lot of times when we hear the word humility, we think about like somebody who's shy or hides back or doesn't want any praise, or somebody says something nice about them, they're like, oh, not me, not me, not me. And humility is actually something very different than that. And the way I've learned to experience and really be energized by humility is to learn that it's the idea that it's not over or undervaluing my opinion, undervaluing what I believe, but it's also not undervaluing what other people believe. It's being willing to agree with the idea that I don't know everything. And I need other voices in my life that are going to help me see the whole picture, to help me grow in ways that maybe I haven't before. And I typically have found that in a couple of different ways. One is through divine influence. I'm a believer in God. I'm someone who follows the teachings of Jesus Christ. I try to live by faith, put into action what he says. And ultimately, a lot of that boils down to this idea that I have come to realize that I do not have ultimate understanding, ultimate knowledge, ultimate wisdom, or the ability to ultimately love someone completely unconditionally. And so if I am not perfect in understanding, perfect in wisdom, perfect in knowledge, and perfect in love, then guess what? My perspective, my actions, my attitudes are not going to be perfect either. And so I need a divine influence, something that is beyond me, something who has greater wisdom than me to guide me and direct me. And without that, without divine wisdom and revelation, I often end up thinking that I am God, that I always know best, that my perceptions and my perceiving of what's going on must be right because I'm the ultimate authority. And humility reminds me, especially when we think about connecting with divinity, with a divine source of knowledge, a God who created us, is that there is a God and I am not it. And it reminds me that I need to look beyond myself for truth. But the second way that I have found humility to be able to play out in my life is not just through a divine relationship, but it's through diverse relationships. I live in a city, you see it here behind me, New York City, the most diverse city in the United States, and many would argue even in the world. There are thousands of languages or people here from different groups, hundreds of different languages spoken. There are people from every socioeconomic background represented here. There are people from every political persuasion, every spiritual background you can imagine here. And it's very easy in a place like this to try to act like, well, I'm right, everybody else is wrong. And when you live that way, you end up creating enemies and creating distance between people instead of creating camaraderie and companionship. And what I've found when I go out and actively seek diverse voices in my life, voices that don't agree with me spiritually, politically, voices that come from a different ethnic background than me, a different economic background than me, voices that are a different color and live by a different creed than me, then guess what? I am beginning to broaden my understanding. I can start to see why certain people believe a way and I still believe the way that I do. Diverse influence in my life helps me remind that I have not experienced everything in this life. Just like divine reminds me I don't know everything, diverse reminds me I've not experienced everything. And I found when I stop living by humility, it usually causes my life to end up in a couple of places. One is in isolation, right? I ended up by myself. I can't find anybody that I can connect with or that thinks exactly like me, so I end up isolated. And there's a great lesson. Isolation leads to death. Like if you isolate yourself from everything else, it will lead to death. Isolate yourself from food, water, friendship, people, it will lead to death. We are not designed to live alone. And when I live not in humility, separating myself from the divine influences and the diverse influences, I'll isolate. But the other thing, and that's where I think we're more tempted to do, is we insulate ourselves. When we stop living as humble people, we insulate ourselves, which means we only surround ourselves with people that think like us, act like us, look like us, and experience the world like us. And we create this barrier between us and the rest of the world. And while this might not lead to death, it certainly doesn't lead to prosperity. Prosperity in relationships, prosperity in knowledge and understanding. And I wouldn't say that leads to death, but it can often lead to destruction in our lives because we stop seeing blind spots. We stop being able to have a broader perspective because we aren't allowing diverse words to come into our life and diverse thoughts come into our life. Does this mean I have to believe everything everybody says? No. I don't. But it doesn't mean that I can't find wisdom in having diversity in my life. So my challenge for you is to live humbly by inviting a divine influence and a diverse influence into your life. Hope you guys have a great day.
What a great word. What a great challenge for the moment that we find ourselves in today. You know what? I'm not sure that a life lesson could be more relevant than what you shared, Patrick. Hope everybody listened there. You know what? First of all, the thing that hit me is that we're not supposed to live in isolation. We're not supposed to live thinking that we've got it all together. We've got to seek somebody who knows things greater than we do. And we're not that person. God is. So wherever you may find yourself, wherever you may see some shortcomings when it comes to connecting with people and finding value in others and finding common ground, I hope that you're going to take the words that Patrick shared to heart. And you know what? Maybe we can find that, if we take time, we can really just all get along. If we'll stop demanding our own things, our own preference, we find that most people that we connect with, we have a lot more things that we agree about than we disagree about. So as I always say, if you want to hike the mountain, you do it one step at a time. I think one of the great steps that we need to do is first to step back and realize we don't know it all, and then take a step into someone else's life, find out who they are, find out what they're all about, and then have the opportunity to take a few steps with them, do life together. And you know what? We may find that they have incredible influence in our life, and we can have incredible influence in their life. And just maybe they'll ask us about who we look to for control in our life. And if that's God, then we get to tell them that story. Hike on, my friends.